India has one problem that never seems to disappear: the constant need for US dollars. Not because Indians love dollars, but because the Indian economy simply cannot function without them. Why? Let's go back in history. After the Second World War, the United States emerged as the world's largest industrial and economic power. With its newfound power, it took the lead in restructuring the world's monetary system, anchoring it around the US dollar, making it the world's reserve currency. As Europe recuperated from the devastations of the Second World War, the US positioned itself as the go-to country for goods and services. But countries could buy from the US only if they had US dollars. So if India wanted to buy goods from abroad, it usually had to pay in dollars. But the real challenge came from oil, which from the 50s became the exclusive domain of the Gulf countries. No economy in the world could move without importing oil from the Middle East. At this time, things took an interesting turn which had deep geopolitical ramifications. The Gulf countries didn't have the wherewithal to maintain effective militaries. And that's where the United States stepped in. It promised security to these kingdoms on the condition that they sell their oil in US dollars only. That's where the challenges for the countries like India increased manyfold. Even today, nearly 85% of India's crude oil requirements has to be imported. So every ship carrying crude oil to India also carries with it one simple question: where will India get the dollars to pay for it? That is why the demand for dollars in India never really goes away. Now, if something is in the high demand but limited supply, what happens? Its price goes up. The same happens with the US dollar. If India needs more dollars than are available, the dollar becomes expensive. And when the dollar becomes expensive, the Indian rupee weakens. That is why we often hear people say, the rupee has fallen against the dollar. It's nothing more than demand and supply at work. But if the price of dollar goes on increasing, or in other words, the rupee goes on weakening, imports will become more expensive. So to cool the situation, the Reserve Bank of India starts releasing US dollars into the market. Simply put, that's increasing the supply to reduce the cost. So the obvious question is, where does India actually get all these dollars? Fortunately, US dollars doesn't always leave the Indian shores. It also flows in. And they arrive through several important channels. The first is something millions of Indian families are familiar with: remittances. Indians working in the United States, the Gulf, Europe, Australia, and many other countries regularly send money home. Before the money reaches their families in India, it enters India's banking system as foreign exchange. Every year, these remittances brings tens of billions of US dollars into India, making India one of the world's largest recipients. This is one reason why Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi places great importance on engaging with the overseas Indian community. Apart from emotional ties, the Indian diaspora contributes enormously to the country's foreign exchange earnings. The second source is the foreign direct investment, or the FDI, by foreign companies. When foreign companies invest in India, setting up factories, offices, global capacity centers, data centers, and numerous other multi-billion investment avenues, they bring with them foreign capital, usually in form of US dollars. But foreign companies invest only when they find a country attractive for business. That's why governments focus on improving infrastructure, reducing paperwork, and making it easier to start and operate businesses, or in other words, help in developing the ease of doing business. Ease of doing business, put simply, is how fast and how easily a business can be set up in India. As per the last World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index, India stood at 63 out of 190 countries. Seems low, but it is a considerable improvement since 2014, when it was ranked at 142. The third source is the foreign portfolio investment, commonly called the FPI. This is completely different. Instead of building factories, foreign investors buy shares in Indian companies through the stock market. The money can arrive today and leave tomorrow. Unlike FDI, which is usually long-term, portfolio investments is extremely sensitive to market sentiment. Good economic news attracts foreign money. Bad news can send it rushing out just as quickly. Then comes India's exports. Every software services sold overseas, every pharmaceutical product, every engineering goods, every textile, and every consulting services exported from India earns valuable foreign exchange. In simple words, India earns dollars and India spends dollars. The ideal situation is obvious. More dollars should come in than go out. But because India imports massive quantities of crude oil, that doesn't always happen. When a country spends more foreign exchange than it earns through trade and services, it runs what economics called a current account deficit, or simply CAD. A moderate current account deficit isn't necessarily dangerous. The important question is whether the country has enough foreign exchange reserves to comfortably meet its international obligations. And that is where India's foreign exchange reserves become so important. As of July 2026, Indian reserves stood at roughly around 676 billion US dollars, enough to finance around 11 months of imports, including crude oil. That's a strong financial cushion. But black swan events like the Iran war has forced the price of oil up to nearly 100 US dollars a barrel. Similarly, Donald Trump's exorbitant tariff rates have made the Indian exports to the US difficult. Suddenly more dollars are flowing out while fewer are coming in. Fortunately, India has also diversified its oil imports. In recent years, Russia has emerged as an important supplier of crude oil. But Russia is under severe economic sanctions imposed by US, and as such, it cannot trade in dollars. So India gets off easily by purchasing Russian oil in Indian rupees. That is a wonderful piece of luck that India hit on. And Russia purchases Indian goods by utilizing the same Indian rupees it has collected while selling its oil to India. Simple, isn't it? And that's the essence of managing foreign exchange reserves. It is about ensuring that India can continue importing oil, machinery, medicines, and critical technologies even during global crises. Think of foreign exchange reserves as the nation's emergency savings account. The stronger that account is, the more confidently India can face economic shocks. So next time you hear the news saying India's foreign exchange reserves have increased, don't think of it as just another financial statistic. Think of it as India's financial safety net, one that quietly keeps the wheels of our economic turning every single day.